If you like what you watch, then don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates on The More Show. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new weekly television and radio shows.
All new on The More Show. A young, aspiring football coach was killed on a night out with his friends. Hear what his parents have to say and find out why his father wanted to meet their son's killer.
Because you didn't hate Billy as an individual, you hated what he did.
And then a miracle. One life gone, a new life born. You have to watch it to believe it. Finally, join hypnotherapist Joanna Knight to learn the power of forgiveness.
It's okay to make a mistake, that's how you learn.
If there's one thing we can learn, it's that life can change in an instant. Nobody knows this better than Dave and Pat Rogers. Their story is of unimaginable loss, unbelievable courage, and an undeniable twist of hope. It happened when one of their sons, Adam, went for a night out with their friends at a local pub. Earlier, Adam dropped Dave and Pat off at the airport for a holiday flight to Malta.
He was really looking forward to this night out and a chance to see people he hadn't seen for a while. And from what we understand of it, everybody who met him that night said he was really happy, he had a really, really good time. And it was only at the end of the evening when things went wrong.
Some of his friends were hungry and decided to go off and get some food. Adam waited with two of his friends, Chris and Carl, outside the bar.
And the three of them were sitting there outside the bar on a large stone bench. Another group who'd been in the bar also for a long time, which was a couple of 19-year-old lads and their girlfriends and a 16-year-old young boy. And one of the girls came across and sat on the bench where Adam and his friends were, and she sat behind Carl. And of course, Carl turned around to see who it was and started talking to her, at which time the 16-year-old started shouting, "Shut up, shut up." And Chris and Carl kind of shouted back and insults were exchanged, and then it got to the point where fights were talked about, you know, and eventually Adam and Chris kind of calmed it all down, and the three of them walked away. Unfortunately, a little while later, when the other group left, they went off in the same direction, although they were on separate sides of the road. And the 16-year-old, he was egged on by the others. They thought it would be very funny if he ran across the road and threw this flower head at the others. And when he threw it, he'd hit Carl on the side of the face. And Carl thought he'd been hit by something greasy, and he thought it was some, you know, food, half-eaten food that had hit him. And he reacted badly by spitting. He didn't spit on the lad who'd thrown the flower and was walking away at the time. He spat in his direction. And that gave the two 19-year-olds the excuse, as it were, to come charging across, and one of them waded into Carl and started thumping him. At this point, Adam found himself with the fight going on behind him and the 16-year-old in front of him, who, hearing the fuss, turned around and started walking back towards the fight. What happened next, there were a couple of witnesses who were totally independent. They were council workers who'd come to clean up after everybody had gone home. And they saw this young boy walking towards them with Adam by his side, talking to him. and they said Adam had his hands by his side and his arms by his side and his hands, palms of his hands facing outwards, and he was talking quietly to the lad. Adam's presence was irritating him. He was telling him to go away and get off and leave him alone, and the CCTV images that we saw in court show Adam just shepherding the lad away from the fight and walking away with him. Actually, they were walking back towards where the two girls were standing, and one of the girls said she could see that the young boy was losing his temper, losing it, she said. I could see he was losing it. At that point, it goes off camera. And suddenly, he swung round and swung a punch at Adam and caught him flush on the face and knocked Adam straight back. One of the girls actually said, as Adam went down, she said, "Good punch."
The doctors later told Pat and Dave that Adam was probably unconscious before he hit the ground. Adam was not able to protect himself and went straight down with his head hit in the ground first.
There were two passers-by who'd seen what had happened and came across to intervene, and at that point the three lads ran off. The two passers-by, one of them chased after them, and when he caught up with them, one of the other 19-year-olds headbutted him. So, and then all the attention was on Adam lying there, and his friends arrived who'd been for food, and an ambulance was sent for, and they waited for the ambulance and then went with him up to hospital.
Devastatingly, Adam Rogers died a few hours later at the hospital. He was aged just 24. Adam's parents, Dave and Pat, join me now. Dave and Pat, welcome to the show. It's an honour to have you on. Now, what was the hours like when you went to that hospital? And, you know, I mean, basically, was Adam brain dead at the time when you went to see him?
When we arrived at the hospital, they had waited, because we had to get a flight back from Malta, they'd waited to do the brainstem test. I think they all knew, the medical staff, that there was no hope, but they said they would wait till we got there, so they did the test very soon after we arrived. And we still had some hope in us that he would... we went to see him and he just looked like he was sleeping, and we just wanted him to wake up. But after the results of the test, they said there was absolutely no brain activity, and they do a second test just to confirm it. But so that was when we knew that there was just no hope.
So did it pretty much feel like you was living in a film at that time?
It did, really. It didn't seem real at all. It's difficult to explain. I don't think... We knew it was an awful thing that was happening.
Yeah.
But in one sense, we couldn't really feel it. It was kind of a numbness. This just was going on in a very unreal kind of way. And as Pat said, Adam was there, and he did look real. I mean, because he was on the life support machines,
of course.
So his heart was pumping, his blood was flowing, he had his normal colour, and like Pat said, he just looked as though he was asleep, and you just want to say, come on, time to wake up, time to go home.
I mean, how many people were there at the hospital at the time? There must have been quite a few.
There were. The friends that he'd been out with that evening had all sort of come to the hospital. They'd been in touch with others, and there were about 50 or 60 people were there just waiting, trying to find out what the news was. There were family, there were close friends of ours that had heard, and the hospital staff were wonderful, and they let everybody go in just in small groups to say goodbye.
So at that point then, when you knew that Adam was not going to make a recovery, I mean, the shock that you must have been at that time, the denial that you must have been in. I mean, it's just, you know, I can't comprehend it, or, you know, and most viewers watching this today will find it, you know, difficult to put themselves in your place, and the courage that you've shown to come here today. But at what point then did the organ donors come to see you? Was that pretty much straight away? Was it?
It was quite immediate, really. After the tests had been confirmed and Adam was declared clinically dead, they then asked us, the doctor asked us, would we be willing to speak to the transplant coordinator, and we said yes, we would. They came and they spoke to us, and then they stepped back and gave us some time to consider, didn't they? They didn't push, they didn't, and they were very, very sensitive. But
you felt this was the right thing to do, to donate Adam's organs, because that's the kind of guy that he was.
Well, that's the kind of guy he was, but he had signed up as an organ donor, and I was there when he did it, because it was when he was filling his driving licence application form in for the first time.
Yeah.
And there's a tick box for you to volunteer to be an organ donor. And he asked me about it. He said, what's all this then? And when I explained to him, straight away, it was the obvious thing to do. He ticked the box and said, that's obvious.
Well, I want to speak more about Adam just after the short break, so stay tuned and we'll be back with more from Dave and Pat Rogers.
After the break, find out why Dave Rogers wanted to meet the killer of their son.
Because you didn't hate Billy as an individual, you hated what he did.
Visit themoreshow.co.uk/shop to purchase products and services from your favourite past guests. If you're new to this site, you can also catch up on the previous television and radio shows through YouTube and the More Show website.
One thing that I really sort of struggled with was having to explain to everybody new that was coming in what had happened and what the doctors had told me, and sort of relaying that information was, I found that very difficult.
With every happiness there's always sadness, and there's no joy that's not tainted without the sorrow of loss, really.
The impact was obviously very strong for me. I was obviously very upset, but then seeing my mum and Dave very upset, and Jamie and Tim very upset, and then having to tell my daughter, who's 9 now, and my son what was happening, and other family members, the effect was catastrophic on everyone. So it was a very difficult time.
Welcome back. I'm still joined by Dave and Pat Rogers, whose son Adam was killed by a single punch. Now, just before the break there, obviously we were just talking about Adam, and I mean, did you know how many friends that Adam had outside in his private life? Because I mean, a lot of people knew Adam, didn't they?
A lot of people did, and we knew I had a lot of friends, but we were still amazed by the number, and the number of people who did know him, and the number of people who were really badly affected by what had happened to him. We got comments and letters from people we'd never heard of, as well as his friends, obviously, but people we'd never heard of or seen or met. And it was quite amazing. And the key thing about it was that when they described the Adam they knew, it was exactly the same Adam that we knew, because one of the main things about him as a person was that he never put on an act for anybody. He was always himself. And his friend Ollie said about him, you only had to meet Podge once and you knew him. He never held anything back. And one of his best friends, Emma, said about him, everyone who met him knew him. And what you saw is what you got with Adam. Everyone liked him and thought he was great. And that summed him up. That's how they all felt about him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose, you know, just summing this up, you know, Pat, I mean, it affected the people that knew him as well, didn't it? Not just the family. There was a wider effect, wasn't there, as well?
Yes, it's had a really big impact on so many people who knew him, and I think that's something that other people don't understand. They expect us to be devastated because we've lost our son, but his friends, that still, after it's nearly 3 years now, and his friends are still really struggling to come to terms because they don't expect to lose a friend. You know, they expect to lose their parents eventually and their grandparents, but this is something completely...
So for yourselves, I mean, how is your life now, would you say? I mean, is life getting better? Is it easier nowadays?
In one sense, yes. In that it's easier to get on with the things we need to get on with. It's just as difficult missing Adam. That doesn't change. It's just as the same as it was nearly 3 years ago now, and we can't see that changing at all.
Yeah.
But the unreality of that has gone, and if you like, the normal life and with our other sons and the rest of our family and friends, this is easier to get on with than it was in those early days when we felt we were in some kind of little bubble.
You learn to live this different life. Our lives changed on that day, and they will never be the same. The grief is still very, very powerful, but you actually learn to live with it. You don't have the same joy in life that you had before, even when things are nice things happen, and you know, we've got a lovely new grandson, and we get joy from that. But the natural joy, I feel like in me, is gone.
Because when something like that happens, virtually the first thing that comes into your mind is, Adam's missing this. Adam would have liked this, or Adam would have loved to have been here. And it's just below the surface all the time. So,
I mean, do you ever feel Adam's around you at all? I mean, has that ever crossed your mind?
I think for me, I feel his spirit is always with me, and you know, occasionally I do talk to him.
Yes.
So I do feel the essence of Adam will always be with me.
Well, especially what you're doing now, the essence does continue on in your campaign. Now, just tell us a bit about that. What you're doing.
Well, on the first day that this happened to us, we all, the family, were together, and we said we don't want it to destroy us as a family, and we want to do something positive in Adam's memory. And very, very soon after it happened, we thought about this word consequences, and because my background was education, and I'd always believed in young people, and I still do. You know, I spent 33 years working with 16 to 19-year-olds, and I loved it. So I wanted to do something positive, and we thought of producing some education materials that really made young people think about the stupidity of reckless violence and binge drinking, which has become too much accepted as part of the youth culture.
It has. It really. I mean, if it wasn't for the binge drinking, do you think Adam would still be here now?
Yeah. I guess, I mean, it was
absolutely.
What is wrong with our culture? What is wrong with our young people going out there, taking no consequence for their action, and getting so drunk that you know, to cause violence? I mean, that's what's going on. It's most weekends. Not everyone's the same. Not everyone.
Not everybody's violent, no, and not everybody gets to that state of drunkenness, but a lot do, and I think it has changed over time. I think young people do drink more heavily than we did when we were their age, on a regular basis, certainly.
I also think that it's the young people who are really nice young people and would never dream of doing anything violent. They go out and they accept that that's what they see when they're on a night out, and that shouldn't be. And I think it's the only people who can change the culture is the young
Yes.
people themselves.
Yeah.
And I think if they show that it's not what they want, it's not what they accept, and they show their disapproval of it in whatever way, you know, they can do, then I think it's only little drips. We're not going to change the world, but I think it's really important for them to think about it.
I think another amazing thing that that you've done as well, and Dave, you're the one that has gone to see Billy Upton. Now he's the guy that was sentenced in the end for Adam's murder. Now, why did you go see Billy? What was the reason behind that?
There are a number of reasons, and start at the beginning. One is that I felt I needed to get our voice heard, our point of view put across. I wanted Adam to be known for who he was.
Yes.
And none of these things really were dealt with during the trial. The criminal justice system doesn't, and I know a lot of it's a common complaint, does not give the victim a voice. It was important to me to meet Billy Upton to make sure he understood the damage he'd done by his reckless behaviour that night.
And what was his answers to you? Why did he do what he did? Why did he punch Adam?
Well, initially his story was that he punched Adam because Adam was threatening him. This was the story that was told in court, because he pleaded not guilty to manslaughter. And we knew that this just wasn't the case. Adam had never threatened anybody in his life. And I wanted to put that to him. I wanted to make sure he understood how we felt. And that was the first thing, the impact of what he'd done.
Yes.
I also wanted to know what you've just said. I wanted to know why he said what he did in court, and why he thought that might be possible. Now, I can't tell you his answers to those questions because our conversation has to be still regarded as confidential. I can only say that the meeting as a whole was a very satisfactory meeting for my part, very positive indeed.
Well, absolutely, because the positivity I see about this meeting with him is that he actually got to feel what you had to go through, and what can be more challenging, more of a way to understand what someone's gone through than to feel it and to see it in your eyes and what you had to say to him.
Well, that's absolutely true, and you have to realise that restorative justice, a meeting like that, doesn't take place unless the offender wants it to take place. And he did want to meet me.
Okay.
And he wanted to meet me, and he wanted to answer any questions I put to him.
Okay, because you didn't hate Billy as an individual, you hated what he did.
Oh, the way he behaved that night was absolutely dreadful, yeah.
Have you gone through that process of forgiveness?
The behaviour's still there. I can never forgive the way he behaved because it was, and the key to it was the drinking.
Yeah.
He was very drunk that night.
And I'm not sat here saying that you have to forgive him. I don't think you should. If that's the way you feel, then you should not.
No, but that's separate from who he is now. If he is prepared, and he has been prepared by meeting me and apologising, and by facing up to the kind of person he was then, and being, I came away with the feeling that he doesn't want to be that person anymore. He wants to be a different kind of person. Then, no, I can't have, any ill feelings towards that. We would want that to happen. We said, even at the trial, when he didn't show any remorse at all, we said that we didn't want to see another life ruined, and what had happened was a tragedy for both families.
Absolutely. I mean, for yourself, Pat, was that something you weren't ready to do just quite yet, to go down and see Billy?
Yes, I didn't feel that at that point I was actually ready to meet him. I didn't feel I was ready to be in the same room with him. I think the process of it is really important, and I was very happy that Dave wanted to do it, and I wanted to support him through it, but it just wasn't the right time for me to do it.
We're going to come back to this, so stay tuned and we'll be right back.
After the break, one life gone, a new life born. You have to watch it to believe it.
Visit themoreshow.co.uk/shop to purchase products and services from your favourite past guests. If you're new to this site, you can also catch up on the previous television and radio shows through YouTube and the More Show website.
Prior to the transplant, I was unwell. I'd been made redundant. I lost a brother. We had very little hope of having children. The outcome was looking bleak because of the continuing health problems. The issues with diabetes would have only got worse, and who knows what that might have led to. There was some initial anxiety about it more than anything else, but I also knew that it could change my life so much that it could be a positive thing as well, so I was quite calm about it, really. Since having the transplant, it's not just means that I've had something that's benefited my health in the short term, it's benefited my health wholeheartedly, and it's meant that in years to come I've got a much brighter outlook on things. It's meant we can go on to have children, and indeed we've had Emily since the transplant, which I think is a major benefit, certainly for us. It means I say we can go back. I've been able to go back to work, and we've got a great work-life balance now where we're both working, but we're able to look after Emily as well and be a nice family that has everything, really, rather than struggling for things as we did before.
Our life just seemed to completely change for the better. So, you know, we've then gone on to have Emily, and we can just go out as a family, places, go off walking, and just be thinking about what we want to do for Emily to make sure Emily's fine, and not have to think, oh, is he going to have a hypo, or is he going to become unwell, and things like that. We can go off wherever we want and just have a lot more freedom, really.
When we had Emily, when Emily was born, I wrote back to the donor family because I wanted them to know that having that transplant has not just helped me in terms of my health, but it's also enabled us to carry on with that IVF process. It's something I thought it's a great positive for them to know that their son's donation has meant we've been able to go on and have a child of our own, which may or may not have happened otherwise.
Being a mother is just wonderful, especially when she's such a happy little girl like this. She can be a bit of a daddy's girl, because I work a lot more than what Mark does because of the health issues and everything. But we've got a nice balance in the family, and she shows us all a lot of love, and it's just wonderful.
Dave and Pat wrote back to Mark and Caroline, and they started corresponding. Both families eventually arranged to meet up at Dave and Pat's home for the first time.
I did the only thing I could think of when we actually met them, and just went straight up to Pat and gave her a hug, and that just made things so much easier to cope with. It just broke that ice straight away, and we just got on really well, and we were really comfortable with each other after that.
I was holding Emily, and she was just smiled and was just so pleased to see us both, and she was just so welcoming us into the house, and we just straight away just started chatting, really, didn't we? And it wasn't like you were meeting a stranger, it was just like we were meeting up with some old friends just straight away.
Mark and Caroline Smith have since been keeping in touch with Dave and Pat, and offered each other the support they needed.
It's something that you can never say thank you too much for. Their son's gift has just meant so much to us as a family, and this little girl here is testament to how much that donation has meant to us.
Dave and Pat Rogers are still with me, whose son's donation has saved the lives of 5 people. Well, that was just incredible, you know, the story of Mark and his family. Now, Mark Smith and his wife, and they've now got Emily. I mean, when you have watched that clip back just there, I mean, what's it make you feel?
Well, it's a lovely story, really. It's we knew that by agreeing to Adam being a donor on the day, that it was a first positive step, and we knew that it was a way in which Adam was going to be able to carry on helping people, as he always did, after his death. And but we didn't expect literally a new life to be a result.
It's incredible, isn't it?
It is, absolutely.
Absolutely amazing. Yeah, I mean, and you've met them, Mark, and his family.
Yeah,
And what was that like to meet them in the flesh? I mean, to know that that's part of Adam in there as well.
That was an amazing feeling when we first met them and they came into the house. It was like a little part of Adam coming home. And then to see that little baby, Emily, and to know that, you know, that Adam was never able to have children, but at least he played a small part in that child. And you know, there's a new life that's partly because of him. So that was it's really nice. Well, nice isn't a good enough word. It is amazing.
Well, 5 altogether, wasn't it? You know, including Mark.
Yeah.
And you've had communication from the other 4. Is that right?
Yes, and there are some amazing stories. There was one man who had already had a liver transplant which had failed, and if he hadn't had Adam's liver that night, he'd have died. Simple as that.
Oh my gosh!
I mean, there's some amazing stories.
Does it help you to make sense of what's happened to Adam? I mean, in a sense.
For us, it fitted with the sort of person that Adam was.
Yeah.
He was loving and giving, and that's what he did right at the end.
And very typical of this young man as well.
And all his brothers are totally supportive of it, aren't they? I mean, they think it's marvellous.
Do you think that as families we don't talk enough about organ donation? It's a bit of a taboo subject in a sense.
Yes, it is, and it's not something that you really want to talk about. And part of the work we're doing with young people is just saying to them, you know, this is what's happened, this is the good that it's done. If, you know, God forbid anything happens to you, but if it did, would your family know what your wishes were? And it's a conversation you only need to have once.
Yeah.
And once you've done it, that makes that decision so much easier, because there are so few donors. You know, sort of there are 3 people that die every day waiting for transplants.
That's a true statistic, isn't it, as well? 3 people a day die, and there's 10,000 people on a waiting list for organs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible. And I think there's only 30% of the UK population as well that's actually registered with the donors as a donor.
And it's probably because they've never got around to thinking about it. It's not, I don't know, perhaps I'm being over-optimistic, but I think most people, if it's put before them, would say, yeah, it's a sensible thing to do.
I think thinking about the help that you can give and that gift of life for somebody else, it's sort of, you've got to try not to think about the physicality of it, because that isn't very pleasant to think about. But, you know, but you put that on one side and you talk about the gift of life for somebody else, because, you know, that's something that you can do.
And what would you want your future work to be now? Where's this now taken you, in a sense?
Well, we hope through the educational programme that we've put together that Adam's story can carry on having an influence on young people, and we just hope that the people who listen to the story, some of them will be affected, and we've always said if we got the message across to one person who otherwise might have lost the life or caused the loss of life of somebody else, then it's been worth it.
Okay. And what advice would you give to people that are going through a pretty tough time right now, that have had to go through organ donation? And is there light at the end of the tunnel?
Oh, that's a difficult one. There is. I think it's whatever comes to you in life, you just have to be as strong as you can and just learn to live with it, and don't lose the sort of strength and the love of your family either. I think that's been so important for us.
Yes, so important that is, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, it must have brought you closer together as a family as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is all part of the healing, isn't it? So the DVD is available, the Consequence DVD, that's available through the website as well.
Through the website it will be, yeah.
Okay, and the website is, just for the audience?
It's www.eahconsequences.com.
Okay.
So that's every action has the EAH.
Consequence, okay. And is there any last word that you might like to give to the audience?
I hope that, you know, that the legacy for Adam is that people think before they drink too much and before they resort to violence.
And there is something you might say I'm biased, but I know anybody who knew Adam would agree with me on this, that anybody who knew Adam would say that knowing him made their lives that little bit better. The world was a better place for Adam being in it. And I think if any of us can say that about ourselves, then I think we're doing not so badly.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you both so very much for coming on, and we'll put all the details on our website as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay tuned, and we'll be right back. After the break, learn the power of forgiveness as I speak to hypnotherapist Joanna Knight.
It's okay to make a mistake, that's how you learn.
Visit themoreshow.co.uk/shop to purchase products and services from your favourite past guests. If you're new to this site, you can also catch up on the previous television and radio shows through YouTube and the More Show website.
Welcome back. I'm now joined by author of Return from the Void, Joanna Knight. Now, based on her personal experiences, clinical hypnotherapist and stress consultant Joanna set a mission to research the human ability to face adversity. Now, whatever the challenge is, it's her belief that it can be overcome with dignity, resourcefulness, courage, and even success. So, Joanna, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, Joanna, you can identify with Pat and Dave's story, can't you?
Yes, totally, yeah.
And I mean, just tell us a bit about background about yourself to begin with, and we'll sort of come back to Pat and Dave as well.
Basically, I went through a very tough time about 8-9 years ago and ended up not planning to, but losing everything in my life. It was a bit like a domino effect. Everything had fallen away from me. I lost both my children, my home, my job, my friends. It was all over time, over a number of years, but once it started, it began to gather up speed, and it all happened fairly quickly. I had several deaths in the family. I had loss in every sense of the word. Yeah. I found myself homeless at one point, so eventually the final thing was to go was my health as well. So yeah, it was quite a stressful time.
So how did you turn that all around, and what are you doing today?
Right, turning around, one's life doesn't happen overnight. We have to be patient sometimes, which is a hard lesson to learn. Everybody wants things instantly today, but I keep saying to people the only thing that's instant is coffee.
Or Amazon.
Or Amazon.
Yeah.
It's just really keeping your eye on the goal, knowing where you want to go, knowing where you want to head. I took one day at a time. I used to write little life plans out for myself. and just using a lot of visualization work. Around that time I also studied philosophy, psychology, found myself studying stress consultancy, finally clinical hypnotherapy.
So with Pat and Dave's story, I mean, you know, it's incredible what they've done.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. The strength that they found to even be doing what they're doing today. I mean, it's being true to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's honouring their feelings.
Yeah.
And it's doing what they truly believe they should be doing.
Yes.
And you can't be any more, you know, honest to yourself than and respectful to yourself than that, and to Adam as well. But is it not a case as well, like when I was saying to David, you know, about forgiving as well? I mean, this whole forgiving thing, should we forgive, do you think?
I think forgiveness is never a bad thing. When clients come to me and they've been through a tough time, it's different. You can't forget what's happened. That's the first thing. But what you can do is take the lesson from it, which is what Pat and Dave have done, which is a really good thing. Secondly, it's removing the pain. Why should you suffer? Why should you continue suffering because of one individual? So it's just removing the pain, and sometimes that can be done through internal processes, sometimes external processes such as therapy, and sometimes just being proactive and taking the action like Pat and Dave have taken to seek some sort of comfort and make some kind of sense from what's happened.
Well, yeah. I mean, what they're doing as well, you know, to be educating the young as well about consequences. Yeah. That's so important, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I suppose you've got to let go and move forward, and that's the one thing that your book, Return from the Void, which I've gone through as well. You know, does touch on. Yeah,
it's really living up to challenge, living beyond fear. There's a lot of people. I mean, the opposite feeling to love is fear.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of people are living in fear nowadays. And, you know, sometimes it's fear for not appearing tough enough, fear for not joining in.
Yeah.
My daughter's just, interestingly enough, been diagnosed with an alcohol allergy, so she can't drink, and due to an illness that she has. And a lot of her friends have dropped her because she's not valid as being able to have fun anymore, which is a shame.
Well, it's like you said, it's fear. You know, most people come from fear, don't they?
Yeah.
You know, that's such a good point. But you know, through whatever adversity that you've gone through, and especially in Dave and Pat's case, you know, you've got to stay strong, haven't you?
You have to stay strong, I think, for yourself, and the best way to do that is just to have a focus, Kevin, and be able to have a goal there. And if you can keep that goal in mind, even if you have a journal at night and you can write down your feelings, how you feel, what you're aiming for, even cut out visual stimulants like pictures, you know, watch uplifting movies, you know, film therapy, music therapy. There's lots of different ways that we can motivate ourselves, and that's what's needed, is a bit of motivation.
And do you think it's like, you know, like you said before, you know, you have to live with positive intention, don't you, as well?
Yes, yeah. Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
for yourself and as much as anyone else.
Yeah, it's a case of either sink or swim, and it got me to thinking when I went through my challenging times, why is it that some people tend to sink and others swim? Got me really thinking about that whole concept, and it does come from within. You just have to dig deep.
Do you think there's a point sometimes where we just let go, where we, you know, move on? And we don't even know we've moved on in a sense, but you know, the sort of life's moved on. You've gone with the flow more.
Yeah, I think people tend to forget, don't they? They're in their little comfort zone and they don't want to step outside of that comfort zone. Unfortunately, the nature of the universe, the nature of life, is constant change and evolution. We're constantly moving. In reality, nothing actually stands still. So how, therefore, can we really expect change to not come along and bite us in the bum every now and again when we're least expecting it? And that is part of learning and growing.
Yeah, yeah. And going back to yourself with your story then, I mean, what was the first initial steps that you made to change yourself?
I think it was asking a lot of honest questions that I didn't really want to look at about myself and answer, but I had to put my hands up and admit where I'd been wrong. Look at things, hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? But there's nothing wrong with that. As long as you don't continue to carry the burden and beat yourself up. There's no point in doing that. As I say, I think in the first chapter of the book, it's what is a mistake? People seem to be very scared of making mistakes today. MPs, oh, it wasn't me, it was this person here. Nobody will say, well, actually, it was me. I've made a mistake. Okay, I'm human. It's okay to make a mistake. That's how you learn. And nobody, let's face it, gets up in the morning and says, oh, I know, I'm going to ruin somebody's life today. I'm going to kill someone today. I'm going to ruin my life. Nobody has that intention when they get out of bed in the morning. It's an unfolding of events that happen. As I say, nothing ever stops. There is movement always. And
I mean, with Billy Upton, I mean, I wonder, you know, how he lives with his life right now. I mean, I mean, like you say, I mean, if you've made a mistake and you are sorry for what you've done, it must be difficult though I mean, how do you, if someone's made a mistake, how do they move on from that? Does it start with forgiving yourself first?
I think that's a tough one, forgiving yourself. If you look at a mistake with all honesty and you take what you can from learning that very tough lesson, you know, one would hope that he's looked at that lesson and thought, well, obviously, I'm not going to do that again. No way. We'll spread the word. We'll spread messages to others, having learnt his own mistakes. And it could be a rebirth of a person. Quite often, it can be a complete rebirth of a person. It can turn them around. They can start doing good deeds. And they can spread that word. It's quite contagious. Once one person's
so are you
got
saying,
that,
had he not gone through this, then there may be a bigger change? There
could have been a bigger shift at a deeper level than we could even comprehend.
But taking responsibility is important, though. I mean, he never took responsibility for his actions that night.
No.
There was no consequences as far as he was concerned.
No.
And that's so important, isn't it? You have to take responsibility.
You do.
You know, we're so used to just, you know, others to be responsible for us, aren't we? You can see those patterns in everyday life. You know, it's not my fault. You know, it's not. I'm not to blame. You know, I'm not responsible for it. But you are. Wherever you are in your life, you're responsible for where you are now.
Yes.
Take charge, and you give yourself the power back, don't you?
You do. I mean, if you're in a bad place, people find it hard to accept. They say, well, no, I didn't ask for this. But in a way, we are kind of where our choices and the people that we meet have led us.
Did you find yourself saying that to yourself, perhaps, that you were responsible for where you got to?
That's a tough one, and to have to face up to that's a tough truth, but it is true. It's also short-termism. We don't tend to look beyond here. If we look at the bigger picture, it will give us a chance to actually step back and think, well, hang on a minute, before I say this, before I do that, let's think a bit further down the line. Unfortunately, not all problems can be dealt with short-term.
No, they can't, and there's never an easy answer to some things, except if we came from a bit more love, it would be a different world. If we just tread each other, knowing that, you know, that we're all connected in a sense, that there's no separation, imagine the world.
Amazing.
It'd be changed in 10 years, it would.
Amazing, and good feeling. There's a doctor, Dr. David Hamilton, I believe, who's actually proven that feelings and words are actually
we
contagious.
Are family. Yeah, we are. If we treat each other like family, most of these things would never take place.
That's right.
But yet we see separation in all of us. We see us as separate from each other. Yet there's no separation really.
No.
Well, how can people find out more about your work as well?
You can have a look on my website, www.firstsuccess.com. That's 1st success.com. And you'll find me there, or again, it's www.returnfromthevoid.co.uk.
Joanna, thank you so much for joining us today. For more information on today's show, visit my website, themoreshow.co.uk, and don't forget you can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter to get the latest updates on the show. So until next time, thanks for watching.
Don't forget you can also hear The More Show Late Night Talk on various FM stations across the UK. Check The More Show website for station listings.
If you like what you watch, then don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates on The Moore Show. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new weekly television and radio shows.